Welcome into Outkick the Show. I hope all of you are having fantastic Mondays wherever you may be. We have got a lot to dive into. Let's begin with the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. We'll get to it shortly. John Calipari's overrated. We will also talk about Kristaps Porzingis' rape investigation and the Joe Biden hug controversy. If you haven't been paying attention to this thing, it has swept across the nation, at least online, in the last several days. And Sean McVay pranks Cliff Kingsbury. I promise that I will not prank you, even though it is April Fool's. I will just give you a fantastic show. So let's start talking about what happened in the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. Most of the Sweet 16 games have been done for a while, so I'm primarily going to focus on the Elite 8. We got 4 incredible games on Saturday and Sunday. If you watch them, I watched all 4 of them, and there were several things that jumped out at me about the Elite 8 games. Let's start with Purdue. All right, Virginia wins in a controversial manner, and there's been a lot of discussion, and some of you are so dumb that you don't understand basic probability. Matt Painter and Purdue made the right decision to foul at the end of that game, up 3 with about 5 seconds to go, rather than allow UVA to attempt the tying 3-point shot. Every time this happens, people don't understand why that decision is made. It's because the probability of making a 3-point basket is much higher than the probability of making a free throw, then getting the rebound and making another shot, okay? That's not to say in general that there's something wrong with the decision not to foul. It's just if you're playing probabilities, Matt Painter made the right decision. All right, so let's jump through that analysis in general. A lot of people fail when it comes to analyzing results versus process. You can make the wrong decision and get a good result. The process, not to go all Nick Saban on you, is to make the right decision and ultimately be able to get the right results. So, when you look at that scenario and you break it down, I think it's pretty straightforward and pretty clear that the right decision was made and that, unfortunately for Purdue, they managed to have Virginia execute the rebound, the tap back, and the pass to lead to a jumper to perfection, okay? So, when I look at that scenario, I always say it's the equivalent of like playing blackjack. And I used this analogy on the radio show this morning. I was playing blackjack in Vegas, and every now and then you're at a blackjack table where a guy doesn't understand basic probability and drives you crazy, okay? This happened to me most recently. We're at the table. Guy's got a 12 or a 13 showing. Dealer has a 5 or 6 showing or a 4, and he is deciding to make the decision to continue to hit, even though he should just stay still, right? It's frustrating for the table because he takes cards that shouldn't be going to him. But sometimes he got a hit, and it made sense. More often than not, he actually busted. And he gained nothing from a probability perspective by busting. And so that's the difference between a process-based approach and a means-based and a results-based approach, okay? That is the way that you need to think out the process, right? So, a lot of people said, well, Purdue ended up losing, so they made the wrong decision. No. Purdue made the right decision. Having said that, I loved the bitter part of me. I haven't quite retired as a fan yet. The bitter part of me loved seeing Ryan Klein, who could not miss a shot against Tennessee. He went 7 for 10 from 3. I think 6 for 7 from 3 in the second half. The dude single-handedly shot Purdue into the Sweet 16, from the Sweet 16 to the Elite 8. His final shot of his college career, a free throw that if he had made it would have put Purdue into the Final Four. He missed the free throw. This dude is going to spend the rest of his life working as an insurance agent somewhere in middle of nowhere, Indiana, thinking about that free throw that he missed that kept Purdue out of the Final Four. And I got to tell you, I loved seeing that happen. The angry fan in me loved seeing that guy fail after he shot the lights out and couldn't miss. I absolutely love Ryan Cline missing that free throw, because for the rest of his life, he's going to be sitting around thinking, why did I miss that free throw? Why did I miss that free throw? Why in the world couldn't I make that free throw to put Purdue into the Final Four? The great thing about sports is when you're a fan, it can create totally irrational hate. I gotta say, I love that missed free throw, and I love the idea of it hanging over every Purdue fan for the rest of their life and not being able to forget it. I love the idea of Purdue fans walking into their kitchen and having flashbacks of that free throw. I love the idea of Ryan Cline for the rest of his life having to deal with the fact that while he might have gone off on Tennessee and hit a bunch of shots that he didn't deserve to make, he couldn't make a free throw that would have put his team into the Final Four. So that was one big story. Virginia goes to the Final Four. Congrats to the Hoos. All right, that's one story. Outside of that story, big discussion about Coach Calipari and the collapse of the Kentucky Wildcats yet again. But the bigger story to me is Bruce Pearl and Auburn going through Kansas, going through North Carolina, and going through Kentucky, the three winningest programs in the history of college basketball. Boom, boom, boom. And doing so without Chuma Okeke, whose injury was so significant with about 8 minutes left to play against North Carolina. This was Bruce Pearl's masterpiece. This was everything that I've always loved about Bruce Pearl brought to bear in 3 games that were scintillating to watch. Congrats to Auburn. War Eagle indeed. Now, a couple of things on top of this. I thought that the performance of Jared Harper was just electric. It was extraordinary. And I thought his veteran leadership in conjunction with Bryce Brown made a big difference when you looked at the backcourt and the way Kentucky played. Ashton Hagen's not very good. Tyler Hero couldn't step up to the moment. And Kentucky just wasn't good enough in guard play to be able to capture this. Now, some people get mad at me. I share my unvarnished opinion every single day, right? And what I have said for years is, typically, I want you to listen to this carefully. In order to break a historical trend, you need one of 2 things. You need either a difference maker at coach or you need a difference maker at player, right? Because, and I hate to get all time as a flat circle with you, but the future is typically a subtle variation of the past. In other words, it's very rare that we suddenly end up going off on an entirely new tangent in an entirely new direction. Think about this and use it to guide you in the future. The future is typically a subtle variation of the past, particularly in sports. What occurs that will alter the trajectory of the future is a coach or a player is transcendent. In my time doing what I do and following the teams that I do, there have been 2 transcendent coaches that I have gotten to know. One is James Franklin at Vanderbilt. Tennessee fans got mad at me because I said James Franklin changes everything at Vanderbilt University when it comes to football. He won back-to-back 9 games. He did it. I was 100% right in my analysis there. Bruce Pearl is the other. Bruce Pearl is the other person who I've ever seen coach who what came before him doesn't matter. He's that good of a coach. He creates his own new future, his own new historical paradigm. And I'm not surprised that he took Auburn to the Final Four. The irony here is that the greatest paradigm-shifting coach of my life at Tennessee might end up winning a national championship at Auburn. The Tennessee basketball program is cursed. the Tennessee program in general has been cursed. And it's proven by statistics and data too, by the way, because this is an interesting list. Most Final Four NCAA trips without a trip to the Final Four. Major college athletics. Missouri. I'm sorry, Mizzou. You have been 26 times to the NCAA tournament. You have never advanced to the Final Four. That is the worst in major college basketball history. So Mizzou, if you think you're cursed, you are 100% right. You have been to the NCAA tournament more times than any other major program in college basketball without advancing to the Final Four. The second most cursed major college basketball program of all time, relative to number of NCAA appearances without a Final Four trip, Tennessee. And then Alabama and Boston College are the major universities. The four most difficult histories of NCAA tournament futility, defining futility as not advancing to a Final Four, is Missouri, Tennessee, Alabama, and Boston College. Those are the four worst. So congratulations to Auburn. Also congratulations to Texas Tech. Incredible performance to be able to go for both of them to the Final Four for the first time. All right? That in and of itself is really, really impressive. All right? Now, John Calipari is the most overrated coach in college basketball, and I'm not sure there's a close second. All these Kentucky fans are triggered. They're all curled up in the fetal position. They're all whimpering because they are paying $9 million a year for failure. They are consistently bringing in the best players in college basketball. For a decade, John Calipari has brought in more talent than anybody else in all of college basketball, and the results have not been very good. I want you to give you a couple of numbers here, all right? Kentucky and North Carolina, Duke and North Carolina, big-time, major basketball programs, right? Duke and North Carolina. Roy Williams, Coach K, everything about it, big-time winners, right? Coach K has 5 national titles, 12 Final Fours, second only to John Wooden. Roy Williams has 3 national titles at UNC. In the last decade, North Carolina and Duke combined have produced 27 first-round picks. Kentucky has produced 25 first-round picks. I want you to think about this for a minute. Basically, Kentucky, from a draft perspective, is an all-star squad combined of Duke and North Carolina. In the last 11 years, Duke and North Carolina have won 4 national championships. 2 for Duke and 2 for North Carolina. I want to ask you this. How good would Duke and North Carolina be and or have been if you combine them such that they are one team? That's effectively what Kentucky is, okay? I don't think this gets enough attention. The degree of talent that John Calipari has relative to everybody else in college basketball is off the charts. And I'm putting it into perspective with you by saying, imagine Duke and North Carolina combined. If you made an all-star squad between those two teams, that would effectively be how much talent that Kentucky has had. Now, Duke has won 2, and North Carolina has won 2 national championships. Combined, they have won 4. Can you imagine if Duke and North Carolina were combined together and allowed to play as one team? How many championships do you think Duke and North Carolina combined would have won over the last 11 years? They won 4 over the last 11 years, over the last decade. 4. Okay? They won 4 championships. Imagine if you put them together and they were one team. That's Kentucky. Kentucky has won 1 championship. Kentucky has won 1 championship despite having almost the exact same number of first-round players over the last decade as Duke and North Carolina combined. 4 titles for Duke and North Carolina combined, 1 for Kentucky. Imagine if Duke and UNC was one team. Kentucky fans don't want to see it. They don't want to face it. You got a coach who can't win despite the fact that he's favored in almost every game that he coaches. John Calipari, great recruiter, by which I mean he does a great job letting Nike pay his players to come to Kentucky. Worldwide West, everybody else. This idea that there isn't paying of players going on, I think in the wake of this Adidas lawsuit. If Adidas was paying players, Nike is paying players too, all right? And you do the math on this, it's almost impossible to fail as much as John Calipari has with the amount of talent that he has. $9 million a year. That is off the charts insane. John Calipari makes more money to coach basketball than anybody else in college and maybe anybody else in the pros. And for all that money, it isn't justified in any way by the economics of the University of Kentucky. This always stuns people. How much bigger is football than basketball? Kentucky brings in more money and profit from football than they do from basketball. Even Kentucky, which is a obsessed with basketball state and university, brings in more money for football than basketball. Mark Stoops is more valuable from a financial perspective to Kentucky than John Calipari is. Mark Stoops makes 1/3 of what John Calipari makes, despite the fact that he produces substantially more revenue in his sport. And that's not just in a one-year basis because Mark Stoops happened to be good for this 1 year. It's because football in the SEC is the straw that stirs the drink. And this is wild. There is no way on earth economically to defend what John Calipari is being compensated by, even if he was winning at a Nick Saban-like level. But guess what? He ain't winning at a Nick Saban-like level. Nick Saban, the most dominant coach of all time, has 5 titles in 10 years. Coaching an infinitely more difficult sport with so many much more moving parts. Nick Saban is a great recruiter who makes his team great through his coaching as well. John Calipari has a great relationship with Nike. He brings in players, and he goes out and he loses every year in the NCAA tournament. And people always say, well, it's so hard. It's so hard to go win a championship at Kentucky. The NCAA tournament is so hard. Do you know who Kentucky has played the last 2 years? Think about this. I want to give you the roadmap for what John Calipari has had to go through the past 2 years in order to be able to win a championship or even get to the Final Four. All right, are you ready? Last year, Kentucky had to beat Davidson, Buffalo, Kansas State, and Loyola of Chicago to reach the Final Four. That's who they had to beat. I want to repeat it. In order to reach the Final Four last year, here is the murderer's row that Kentucky had to face. Davidson, Buffalo, Kansas State, and Loyola of Chicago. Beat those 4 teams, you're in the Final Four. How about on top of it? This year, who did Kentucky have to beat to reach the Final Four? Abilene Christian, Wofford, Houston, and Auburn, a team they beat by 30 about a month ago. Does that sound like a murderer's row to make the Final Four in the past 2 years? If Kentucky had been able to beat Davidson, Buffalo, Kansas State, and Loyola of Chicago, and if they've been able to beat Abilene Christian, Wofford, Houston, and Auburn, all 8 games of which Kentucky would have been favored by substantially, they would have been able to go to the Final Four. John Calipari couldn't do it because John Calipari is the most overrated coach in all of college basketball. All right, a couple of other things that I'm going to break down for you here. Kristaps Porzingis. I want to give some props to Michelle Roberts, the head of the NBA Players Association, because she did something today that I haven't seen anybody else in the world of sports do. She said she stood with Kristaps Porzingis. She didn't believe the woman. She actually looked at all the evidence and didn't say hashtag believe all women. Never seen anybody at the head of the Players Association say this before. Never seen anybody in the NHL do it. Never seen anybody in Major League Baseball. Never seen anybody in the NFL. Certainly not the commissioners. She stood up for Kristaps Porzingis based on the evidence that she had seen and believes that this woman was trying to extort him. And I think this is important because it sends the message that you can't automatically believe anyone based on their race, their sex, their gender, or their sexual orientation. As if we had any doubt about that, go see what happened with Jussie Smollett, right? Here's what Michelle Roberts said. We have been aware of these allegations for some time, have evaluated the accuser's claims, and based on what is presently before us, stand with Kristaps. Boom! I love it. I love everything about this woman being willing to look at the facts and the evidence and square up and stare down everybody who's going to criticize her for saying you have to hashtag believe all women. Some people lie. Some men lie. Some women lie. The three most important things, I just see it on the screen anytime you go to investigate anything, are the facts, the facts, the facts. Not what sex you are, not what race you are, not what sexual orientation you are, not where you were born, not who your mom and dad are. Facts, 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 and I love Michelle Roberts doing this. Now, she may have had the balls to do it because she's a woman, and it's harder for her to get Me Too'd in this modern era because she can come out and say exactly what she thinks without having to worry about people saying, oh, how could you be so disrespectful to a woman? Some women lie just like some men lie. Using race, sex, or anything else as a proxy of truth-telling is a fundamental flaw of logic. It's also incredibly detrimental to our system of justice. So I give Michelle Roberts props here. I hope in the future other commissioners and other individuals involved in the Players Association will have the balls to come out and shoot down extortion claims, shoot down false claims. Because here's what you're setting up otherwise, and I've been on this for a while. If you say that you believe every woman, you open up the possibility for women to lie for money or men to lie for money. You can't believe someone based on their identity. You have to investigate the actual facts. She says, based on her investigation, she stands with Kristaps. The Dallas Mavericks knew about this. The New York Knicks knew about this. This is, I think, the kind of statement I would like to see in the future from people who have actually done the due diligence here. I think this is important. All right. We got a big controversy that's emerged. Joe Biden kissed a woman's head, said her hair smelled good, and massaged her on the shoulders out in New Mexico, I believe it was. And this has blown up into a massive controversy. I am here to tell you this right now. This is a nothing burger for Joe Biden. Democrats are trying to throw him to the wolves because he hasn't even officially announced yet that he's running for office, and he is the favorite. Joe Biden is the best possible nominee the Democratic Party can pick. He will beat Donald Trump. He will go into Scranton, Pennsylvania, and grab those Rust Belt voters back. He will go into northern Michigan and drag enough of them back to the Democratic Party side. He'll beat Trump in Michigan. He'll beat Trump in Pennsylvania. He will beat Trump in Wisconsin. And the Democrats would be elected president in 2020. But he's such a strong candidate that before he can get there, he has to survive these outlandish attacks. If the worst thing you can say about Joe Biden is he told a woman that her hair smelled good and he gave her a massage on the shoulders. I'm sorry, that ain't disqualifying a 76-year-old man from running for president, period. All right? This woman, I think, is out for blood because she wants to support another Democratic Party candidate. I think that if you are an intelligent Democrat, which is somewhat potentially of an oxymoron in this day and age, you should want Trump as your you should want Biden as your nominee. And this idea that this is somehow disqualifying is absolutely insane. First of all, it's patently absurd because of all the stuff that's out there about Donald Trump that didn't disqualify him from getting elected president. So I fundamentally refute the idea of the mainstream media that like this non-criminal act is going to disqualify him from being president. Trump was on audio saying a lot worse, right? And most Americans are reasonable and they look at the totality of a picture and they don't make a decision to knock somebody out of the presidential race based on non-criminal conduct. That's because most Democrats and Republicans are still reasonable. Now, the problem is the media ain't reasonable. The media and social media demands a new story every day. And this was Donald Trump's genius. He was able to give them a new controversy every day such that they had no idea what was actually important, what was actually significant, what wasn't. They ended up all conspiring on, collusion is the big deal with Russia, and now that's been shot down by the Mueller report. The truth of the matter is, people in politics, the media, want to believe that they have the power to say what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. The reality is, in this day and age, reasonable people who are Democrats and Republicans still make choices, and nobody judges anything based on one individual act, or even a series of acts if they aren't criminal in nature. So I think this is a nothing burger. I think Joe Biden will be fine. He's just got to back up. He's got to toe the line. He's got to say, sorry. He's got to not do it again, right? Like, whatever. This is not a big deal. It's been trumped up into a big deal because Joe Biden is the leader right now. Finally, it's April Fool's. I'm about to go do my television show. We got a prank. There's lots of pranks going on all over the place. I hate Dodger dogs. They made me do a Dodger dog ad on the radio this morning if you were listening. And I think that that is what exactly has happened, is that April Fool's has gotten way overplayed. I don't even like getting on social media on April Fool's. Rick Byrd retired after 33 years at Belmont today, and I was afraid that it was a prank, a bad prank, because they put the news out on April Fool's. But this is, I think, a really intriguing and funny April Fool's joke, relatively speaking, because it's between a couple of buddies. Sean McVay and Cliff Kingsbury went out to dinner with Patrick Mahomes. While he was there, McVay had changed his phone, put in Roger Goodell's number for a buddy, had the buddy text him that this was tampering, and that both Kingsbury and McVay were going to lose draft picks for going out to dinner with Patrick Mahomes. Kingsbury believed it. McVay said that he had to go make the call, and so that in and of itself was pretty funny. They said, you better call your GM, you're in trouble here. So I appreciate all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'm going to be on television in 28 minutes on FS1, giving you some gambling picks and talking Sweet 16, Final Four, and Elite 8. Kisses to all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show.